Story 1. I worked at a very big tech company for a very long time, like decades. Over the years, I had worked my way up from being a noob to a kind of specialist fixer. I became fairly well known internally as a security/emergency response person. I got assigned the bad or unfixable projects, many of which made news headlines. I have many stories, but I can never tell publicly, sadly. Suffice it to say that multiple senior vice presidents in various divisions got to know who I was, because I effectively wrangled gnarly and complex problems and herded many intense tech nerds together to resolve big things in multiple divisions over the years. It was so fun. At the time of our story, I was working on a small security team in a product engineering division. It was a somewhat turbulent time, and our team of 8 had weathered multiple reorganizations and had so many manager changes. It was a lot. But we kept our heads down and did the work, and we all got along just fine. Sidebar and relevant later, one of the better managers assigned to run our team immediately assigned me a huge and complicated and urgently important project to manage. It would involve people in 6 different divisions, had seriously big legal implications, and our senior VP wanted it to happen by an aggressive deadline within like 4 to 6 weeks. Oh, and my manager was leaving imminently on a long-planned vacation, so he apologetically would be away for the next 3 weeks and unable to assist. The project was to do something big and technical, and which had never been done before, so no one was entirely sure how to do it, who all it would require, what steps in what order. Some of the key players had what we gently called difficult personalities, and oh, by the way, it would definitely make international news and cause a ripple in the industry when we did it. No big whoop. Manager was a decent guy, and he felt bad about leaving me with this thorny mess, and I did it. We got all the people from all the divisions in a room and mapped it all out on a whiteboard. It took days, and hashed out how to do it before the deadline, actually well before, for bonus points. And we lined everyone up to get it done. Before we pulled the actual trigger on the very big thing, I had to attend a meeting with the VP and exec leadership, several levels of management above me, and with a legal team to present the plan and to assure all of the execs that we were ready and had it all handled. So I looked the VP in the eye and assured him that I got this. And then I did. The team did the big thing sooner than the deadline. It was flawless. We rocked that. WOT, just another day at the office. Second. The inept manager. A few months after that epic project, our good manager left us for another role, and someone new moved over from an unrelated division out of nowhere. We'll call him inept manager. Inept manager did not know anything about security. He did not know anything about emergency response. He didn't know anything about what our division did. In fact, no one on our team had ever heard of this guy. He was that worst kind of middle manager, self-important, dismissive of everyone, cares most about appearances and ego, micromanages stuff he doesn't comprehend, and just makes everything worse. But he apparently knows people, and those people get him job assignments because of politics, loyalty. He certainly didn't have any skills or experience for our team. Ugh, that guy is the worst. One of inept manager's many weird quirks was that he didn't think it was appropriate for our team to disagree with or correct each other in front of other people. Things in tech, specifically product development, move pretty quickly, and things change all the time. So if some of our team was meeting with someone from another team, and someone something like, so we decided to make the sky green, and we're on schedule, and someone else on our team chimed in to say, actually that's changed, we decided that the sky is now going to be blue, and we pushed the deadline back 2 weeks, that just happened in an earlier meeting. Oh, okay, cool. Inept manager would interrupt and say, we clearly need to get on the same page, let's end this meeting right now and reschedule when my team is all the facts straight. What? That's insane. We'd literally never have any meetings if we waited until everyone knew all of the same information all the time. Other teams would routinely leave meetings with us with inaccurate info, which affected release schedules, resources. It was just a mess. Third, inept manager hostility. Shortly after inept manager became our manager, he started being really hostile to me. Not to everyone on the team, just me. As far as I knew, I hadn't done or said anything to earn his hostility. Suddenly, after 20+ years at this company, I could do nothing right. While this jerk didn't actually understand most of what my job was, he was sure I wasn't doing it right. And he was quick to tell me so, and often in front of others, to the point that my coworkers would take me aside to ask what was going on. I didn't know either. The thing is, I was the only woman on the team, and I have a disability. Now I've been through some things working in high tech over those decades. It was very much an old boys club back then. And meh, I was fine. I'm not one to claim discrimination at the drop of a hat or for no reason. However, when I was trying to piece together the cause of this dude's hostility, some of his comments were sexist and not at all subtle. He also didn't like that due to my disability, and frankly my seniority. I was given one of the few offices with a door on it in our new building. The rest of our team was in open floor plan cubicles, which everyone hated. He was incensed that I, a lowly direct report and woman, got an office and he didn't. I had more seniority than just about anyone, so even without my disability I'd have scored the office ahead of him. Note that other men in our division got offices too, because again, seniority, and that bothered him less. But I was the only woman on our floor with a door, and I was his subordinate. His ego did not like it, not one bit. He threw a fit about it. Repeatedly. There were lots of other things he said. My favorite among them towards the end was him reprimanding me for my bad attitude in a meeting we'd just had. An up manager had told me beforehand not to say anything during that meeting, because he was insisting on sharing incorrect information again, and he knew I'd want to correct it. So I sat quietly and kept my eyes on the PowerPoint presentation, or the floor nearly the whole time. When I asked him how I'd had a bad attitude when I hadn't said anything as he'd requested, I didn't like the look on your face. Okay dude. After realizing there was nothing I could do to make this guy happy with my work and to lose his hostility, I finally went to HR to go on the record. I knew they'd do fuck all about it, but I wanted to document it at least. So predictably, they told me to work harder at getting along with inept manager, and because it wasn't my first rodeo, I went back to my office and emailed HR saying, "Thanks for meeting with me about my concerns about an F manager. I fear his bias and misogyny will reflect negatively in my next performance review. HR should be aware that there is a real problem here, and I hope you'll take steps etc., which of course they didn't. But now it was on the record. Fourth, the axe falls. And then a few months later he gave me a terrible performance review as expected. Long story already long, he was trying to fire me for underperformance. Unfortunately for me, the company had started rounds of layoffs all over, and it was the worst possible time to be looking for another job internally. And now I had a bad performance review on my record too. I went back to HR and said, "That thing I said I was worried would happen when we met 6 months ago, that happened. Exactly as I said. Now what?" HR once again was no help. Also they'd done literally nothing. But hey, it was on the record again. Helpful for the attorney later. Blah blah blah. When I realized I couldn't find a new gig at my company because of all of the layoffs, I scored a new job for much more money at a different local tech company, and pretty quickly. I live in a tech-heavy area. There was lots of shuffling between 3 to 4 big companies during this time period, and we'd often bump into other company veterans at these other companies. It was a small world. With my track record and references, it was super easy. After that was lined up, I called an employment discrimination attorney to negotiate my exit from the company I thought I'd work at until I retired. Sad face. Because I had documentation with HR explaining inept managers' misogyny and ableism going back for some time. And because they'd done fuck all about it, and because there were witnesses who confirmed his behavior, they had no leg to stand on. They agreed to write me a relatively nice check to go away and to not sue them, and I agreed to not talk about the details of my separation agreement. I went down to my lawyer's office and signed the agreement. I looked to see who had signed the agreement for the company. I assumed it would be someone in HR, but it was still blank. I'd eventually get a copy once someone there signed it. I took my check and packed up my office and left. Bye, old company. I started my new job a few weeks later. Fifth, karma begins. This was August of that year that I left. I got my copy of the executed contract in the mail in October. Who signed it for the company? Not HR, but my exec VP. The one who asked for the urgent, highly important, legally complicated project. The guy I looked in the eye personally, and then delivered on this very big thing he personally asked for, before the deadline he asked for. That is who signed off on my separation agreement. I suspect that he had no idea until that moment that I was gone, and I imagine that he likely had many questions about WTF had happened. And also, why did they have to pay me a chunk of money on the way out? Whoops. I chortled when I saw it. Since the VP knew me and we had some history, an inept manager was new to the division and was one of hundreds of middle managers he'd likely never heard of. I'm guessing inept manager had some explaining to do. Muahaha. I really enjoyed the thought of that. Sixth, karma for Royales. Cut to November. As I mentioned, it was a relatively small tech community in the area, and those of us who worked in security in particular at Company X would often encounter other current/former colleagues at Company Y or Z or whatever. Heck, there was a ton of poaching going on between the companies. One day I got a in-company chat from someone who'd worked in security at my old company. We'll call her security colleague. Security colleague asked me if I knew someone named Inept Manager. Why yes? Yes, I did. Why? Because Inept Manager was appearing on security colleague's schedule to interview for an open management position the very next day. It seems that shortly after my former exec VP had signed my separation agreement contract, Inept Manager was actively looking for a new job at a new company. Hey, a security colleague asked me what I thought about Inept Manager. I said, I can't really talk about it for legal reasons, which, boom, everyone knows what that means. But if you wanted to ring my personal cell phone later this evening to catch up on old times, please do. She did. I hypothetically shared some stories with her about Inept Manager. I also told her where his hot buttons are, the appearance/ego thing, the dominant stuff, etc., and all about his misogyny and ableism, which was perfect since she was conducting his interview. I may have shared some specific scenarios/questions to ask which I knew would set him off. I wished her luck, and for the love of all that is holy to please call me after, when appropriate, and tell me how it all went. It did not go well for Inept Manager. When security colleague rang me, I couldn't wait. How did it go? Well, he got combative and angry and yelled at me twice. During his interview to be hired as a manager. Facepalm, there were lots more details, now lost to time. Except, at that company, interviews loops were assessed as such. Strong hire for this role. Hire, but not for this role, not a good fit for this job, but we like them, no hire ever, not for any role. Inept Manager's interview was rated that last one, no hire ever. Blacklisted from any job ever at one of the biggest tech companies in the world. After being pushed out the door of one of the other biggest tech companies in the world. Derp. Shortly after that, it appeared that Inept Manager moved himself and his wife and kids a few states away to work at a smaller company in another region. It took less than 6 months from when I left my old company for him to be gone as well. Hey, what gets me still is that Inept Manager thought I was so inconsequential, so unimportant, that he didn't bother to check and see where I landed after he forced me out of the company I loved. And when he had to look for a job himself shortly thereafter, it also never occurred to him that I'd have connections with, thousands of colleagues I'd worked with over the years, some of whom could now be working at Company X or Y or Z where he was interviewing, and where I'd scored a huge raise for myself. To this day, he doesn't know why his interview at Company Y tanked so badly. And since security colleague was not legally precluded from sharing stories she had heard through the grapevine about Inept Manager's management problems, it's possible that other of our old security colleagues at Company Z and other companies in this area heard those stories too. Which means he's unlikely to get a job at any major tech company in this area, maybe ever. Definitely not at X or Y, and they are big companies. Among the biggest. And it's all because he's an asshole, labeless, misogynist middle manager who underestimated Lil Almy. Mwahahaha. Story 2. Neighbor used husband's naked photos to catfish women online. Now, my wife believed I was cheating and walked away from our marriage and kids. Hello everyone. My husband, 35 male, and I, 30 female, married for 8 years, have been separated for the last 14 months, and I need help and advice on how to rekindle our relationship. We are currently not on speaking terms, and all our arrangements go through our lawyers, but I will have an opportunity over Christmas to clear the air and set things straight, as he will be flying in from Sydney to spend time with the kids. So what happened? I received a Facebook message in September last year that my husband was talking and exchanging naked photos with other women on Tinder. We spoke on the phone for a bit, and the only proof she had was a screenshot of their conversations and his profile. Long story short, I downloaded Tinder and found his profile, with his location less than 1 kilometer away. I was convinced that he was cheating, and we had a terrible fallout that evening, which led to my family coming over to calm the situation. But instead, it escalated when my brother punched and grabbed hold of my husband. The neighbors called the police, and my husband was asked to pack a few things and stay elsewhere for a while. We separated shortly after, and he has since moved to Sydney to be closer to his ailing father, but sees our kids for a weekend twice a month. Fast forward to the beginning of November this year, my neighbor rocked up at my doorstep to tell me that her husband was catfishing women on dating apps using my husband's photos. He downloaded these photos from a MacBook that we lent him during COVID, and some of these photos were of intimate nature and of me. The police are currently dealing with this. All of this has been relayed to my husband through his lawyer, but his response has been lukewarm, and he said we could talk about it over Christmas. I am so scared that we might be down too far the rabbit hole and that he will likely push for a divorce, even though I know that we love each other deeply. But this took a massive toll on our mental health, finances, and the well-being of our 3 kids. What is the best way to approach him in December and make amends? Some comments: your husband experienced something that you will never understand, a false accusation, an assault from your brother, spousal alienation, no right of recourse against the false accusation, a complete lack of loyalty from his wife, a complete lack of respect from his wife, the loss of the life he had from a false allegation, parental alienation from his children, familial alienation from his in-laws, alienation from friends. The police were called and he had to leave. We separated from him. Your husband has already completed his grieving process. You ask if you are too far down the rabbit hole. Yes, I am afraid there is no going back for you. You chose to not listen to him when he said it was not him. I agree. I don't think they're coming back from that. I understand you had reasons to believe he might be cheating, but it seems he had no chance to defend himself, and getting your family involved made everything even worse. He was punched and was told to leave his house by the police, has been living away from his kids for the past 14 months, and has been treated as a villain by friends. You say you love him, but I don't think love could erase everything you two have been through and rebuild trust. Oh, and here's another thought. Perhaps reach out to any and all of his old friends. Make sure they all know the truth. Yeah, try to salvage what you can for him. But I think the way things happened would have been very damaging. To be clear, I'm not blaming you for wanting to leave when you had clear proof, from your perspective at the time, that he had cheated. It's a reasonable reaction. But the way it took place seemed so insanely violent and dramatic. You two got screwed over, not just by your neighbor, but also by your brother. Punching someone is never acceptable. It would have been a sucky and inappropriate reaction, even if your husband had in fact cheated. Now imagine how your husband must have felt, considering it was entirely unwarranted. Being married is being part of a shared family. The fact that your family got in the middle of it and bodily hurt him would make anyone think twice about getting back in. If you really work hard on mending those bridges, if you ensure everyone takes stock and is accountable for their mistakes, and that includes your brother, then you might rebuild your relationship, but it will most probably take time. Damn, you two really got fucked over by your shitty neighbor. I feel bad for both of you and your kids. I get why you believed he was cheating, and I get why he might not want to rekindle the relationship. What an all-round crappy situation. This sub, cheaters are the worst. Leave someone who cheats on you. Don't give them a second chance. Don't let them lie to and manipulate you. Also, this sub, op is the devil because she couldn't divine that this clear-cut case of cheating was instead a highly unlikely series of events that resulted in her husband's private photos on an active Tinder account in her direct vicinity and proof of that account engaging with women. Like, what the shit, my dudes? Both op and her husband got fucked over hard by this pos neighbor who is now dealing with the police. It's very uncool that shit got physical, but otherwise op did what one would expect of her. They're both victims. If op came on here and laid out the evidence before the truth came to light, none of the users shitting on her now would have been like, talk to him. Maybe your neighbor borrowed your computer, stole his photos, and is elaborately catfishing people from 10 feet away. Hey, tough one. Here's a thought though, perhaps focus your efforts and intention not on getting back together, but 100% on unfucking this whole thing up for him. Imagine all the things that he lost, all the people whose opinions of him changed, everyone you ever spoke to and told about his infidelity and everyone they spoke to, every single little embarrassment, every indignity that happened to him. What your family said and did that would have hurt every colleague, every other parent from school, then bank manager, real estate people, every single person that got the wrong idea and correct them. Own your mistake, position it as your failure to believe him, rebuild his reputation. Then set about correcting the tangible harm done, the financial losses, the physical harm, the struggle you put him through. Consider each and everything that must have been sucked for him. And then of course the biggest thing, the kids. You were swindled, without doubt, but despite your innocence in terms of intent, your actions still caused great harm and were negligent. Think manslaughter, not murder. Either way, you do time for the harm committed, whether the intent was there or not. Focus all of your attention on making him as close to whole as possible. If you do this, there will be one of two outcomes. He still does not forgive you, and if this be the case, then you will have helped fix the life and reputation of an innocent man, and you can look yourself and your children in the face and honestly say that although you made a terrible mistake, you did everything you could to make it right. Or he will see the sincerity, which you better have because he will know if you are trying to seduce him into rekindling the relationship, and he will begin the process of forgiving you for your part in what happened to him. All I can say is that you had better demonstrate an absolute 100% siding with him as it relates to your family, publicly and otherwise, and you will have to be patient. He will get triggered about something this traumatic from time to time irrespective of your efforts and his forgiveness. If you truly want to get square with him, then you may find yourself apologizing for many years to come. You may find yourself having to wear unprovoked fits of rage, unprovoked fits of depression, and separation from your family at yearly milestones. Your commitment to him, and to the cause of making him whole again, will be what determines if any civil relationship, let alone romantic one, is possible. If you've made it to this point, you're a beast.